You feel it long before you name it, that tightening inside your skull. The silent storm that swells without wind. It's the battlefield you never walk across, yet somehow you fight on it every day. No blades, no armor, no enemy you can see, yet the wounds are endless. Overthinking is the war you wage against shadows, a duel with phantoms that retreat the moment you swing, only to gather again the instant you breathe. You know this terrain too well, the way a single thought becomes a swarm, the way your mind traps you inside a chamber with no air. In this place, even silence feels loud. There was a time when Musashi wandered alone through the mountains, carrying not wealth, not comfort, but the weight of his own unrefined mind. Solitude can sharpen a man, but it can also suffocate him if his posture toward himself is wrong. Many imagine that ancient warriors wrestled only with blood and steel, but the fiercest opponents were not on the field. They were inside the fears that whispered before a duel, the doubts that clawed at discipline, the questions that spiraled endlessly in the night. The same questions you wrestle with now, and yet, look at the contrast between their chaos and yours. They faced storms made of men and steel. You face storms made of what-ifs and imagined disasters. Both storms threaten to break a man, but only one of them is truly real. The other lives only in the fog behind your eyes. Endurance begins the moment you step out of that fog, the moment you stop fighting illusions and turn toward reality, the moment you speak to the storm within your skull and it finally listens. If you choose to endure, the fog thins. If you choose to move, the shadows lose their foothold. There is a specific exhaustion you know too well, the kind that arrives before anything even happens. It is the tiredness of a man who carries stones that do not exist. Every imagined future becomes another rock strapped to your shoulders. Every scenario your mind invents becomes another mile you walk, alone, in the dark. You begin to understand why your body feels heavy even when life has barely touched you. Overthinking drains you long before the world ever demands anything from you. Musashi warned against anticipating outcomes. Do not predict, he said. Respond. A warrior who imagines the entire battle in advance loses the sharpness needed to meet the actual opponent standing before him. But modern men have been trained to live inside forecasts. They try to defeat storms that have not formed, prepare for failures that never arrive, and solve problems that dissolve the moment reality touches them. You may not realize it, but you've been exhausting yourself before the journey even begins. Picture a traveler who walks the whole path in his mind, rehearsing every danger, every obstacle, every possible misstep. By the time he reaches the real starting point, he's already depleted. His legs shake not from the road before him, but from the one he imagined in his head. This is the cost of mental scenarios, living an entire life inside the skull before taking a single step outside it. But endurance requires a shift. A warrior cannot move with strength if he is burdened by futures that haven't happened. You meet reality not by assuming its shape, but by standing in front of it with an empty, ready posture. When you stop dragging imagined stones behind you, something changes. Your breath returns, your spine straightens, the mind quiets enough for you to move. Overthinking is the weight that crushes a man before he lifts anything real. Endurance is the discipline of meeting life as it is, not as your mind inflates it. And when you embrace that truth, the future stops feeling like a threat and begins to feel like a terrain you can actually walk. There comes a moment in every man's life when he feels buried beneath the noise he created. Not the noise of the world, but the noise of his own spinning mind. It wraps around him like tangled vines, pulling him inward, dragging him down. Overthinking thrives in clutter, emotional clutter, mental clutter, spiritual clutter, and like a warrior lost in a thicket, you cannot swing your blade freely until you cut your way out. Musashi spoke of the void, but people misunderstand the word. The void is not emptiness, it is readiness. The clearing you carve in the forest, not the forest itself. The space that remains once the unnecessary has been stripped away. You do not achieve the void by forcing silence. You achieve it by removing what does not serve action. There is a difference between contemplation and rumination. One sharpens the blade, the other rusts it. Contemplation is the conscious weighing of reality, the gathering of wisdom, the sharpening of perception. Rumination is the endless turning of the same thought, the recycling of fear, the looping of doubt. One prepares you, the other imprisons you. Modern life encourages rumination. Notifications, conversations, obligations, all of them demand space in your mind. You become flooded, carrying the voices of others and the expectations of a society addicted to noise. But endurance begins when you start clearing those inner notifications, when you mute the signals that drain your strength and amplify the ones that call you forward. When you cut away the noise, clarity arrives like a cold wind. You start to see what can actually be acted upon. You realize how much of your suffering came from thoughts that never needed to exist. And in that moment, the first real endurance begins, the kind born not from force, but from simplicity. A man who clears his mind is a man who can move, and a man who can move is no longer trapped inside himself. 350 words. Pain is not your enemy. Pain is the messenger that most men refuse to hear. The ancient warriors knew this. They saw pain not as a threat to avoid, but as information sent by the path itself. It pointed to weakness, to growth, to truth. Pain told them where to stand, where to push, where to turn their blade. The world has forgotten this language, but you have felt hints of it. The discomfort that rises when something matters, the tension that appears before every important decision, the unease that signals misalignment. Pain is a compass, and yet, most modern men treat it like a curse. Overthinking blooms inside the spaces where pain is avoided. The mind becomes a refuge for imagined scenarios because the man refuses to face the real, small suffering in front of him. A difficult conversation, a hard choice, a responsibility long delayed. Avoiding these things allows them to multiply in the shadows. What could have been a single sting becomes a swarm. Musashi leaned into exhaustion, hunger, and fear, not because he was chasing difficulty, but because he understood that avoiding discomfort corrupts a warrior's spirit. Every battle he fought, every hardship he embraced, carved a deeper discipline into him. He was not seeking suffering for suffering's sake. He was seeking alignment, letting pain point him toward the next step. Modern comfort culture has trained men to flinch at inconvenience. A small challenge feels catastrophic. A brief discomfort feels like a failure. But endurance is the posture of moving toward the very thing that scares you, not away from it. It is the understanding that pain sharpens you when met directly, and destroys you when avoided endlessly. When you accept pain as a compass, overthinking loses its grip. You no longer spiral inside what might happen. You step into what is happening, and the moment you do, the path ahead finally reveals itself. Stillness is the breeding ground of overthinking. It is where doubt multiplies, where fear grows teeth, where hesitation becomes a cage. When a man waits too long, his mind fills the empty space with stories that paralyze him. But action, even the smallest movement, is the predator that hunts these illusions down. The first step is not symbolic, it is sacred. Musashi taught, from one thing, know 10,000 things. The meaning isn't mystical, it is practical. Mastery begins with a single decisive motion. The first cut teaches the hand. The first breath centers the warrior. The first step breaks the inertia that has haunted you for years. A frozen river will not melt because you think about crossing it, but throw one stone, hear the crack, and the entire surface begins to shift. Modern avoidance has twisted the minds of men into believing they need perfect clarity before moving. They want certainty before commitment, answers before effort, and guarantees before action. But clarity is earned through movement, not the other way around. You do not wait for the path to reveal itself. You reveal it by walking. The man you fear becoming is built through hesitation. The man you hope to become is built through the discipline of the first step. You move while afraid. You act while confused. You begin while uncertain. This is the rule of every warrior who rose from obscurity. Not confidence, but motion. Endurance does not require strength at the beginning. It requires willingness. The willingness to cut through stagnation with one honest action. The willingness to generate momentum instead of waiting for motivation. The willingness to step forward, even if the world inside your skull is still screaming. The first step is the quiet rebellion against everything that has held you back. Once you take it, overthinking begins to die. There is a kind of strength that doesn't roar, it doesn't brag, it doesn't swing wildly or burn brightly for others to admire. It is the strength of a man who endures, steady, silent, immovable. This is the strength Musashi carried in his later years, when battles no longer required swords and enemies no longer had faces. He lived simply, repeating his disciplines, carving stability into each day. There was no drama in his routine, no grand gestures, no loud declarations. Just consistency, just presence, just quiet strength. Modern men overthink because they seek ease. They want shortcuts, reassurance, comfort, soft paths. But endurance thrives on the narrow trail. It grows where life rubs against you, where the terrain is uneven, where each step asks something small from you. Not heroic effort, not explosive passion, just steadiness. And steadiness is its own form of power. Consistency defeats chaos. When you repeat the same disciplined acts day after day, you become a mountain in a world of shifting sand. Distraction cannot move you. Doubt cannot break you. Fear can visit, but it cannot claim you. You become the one force in your life that does not change with the weather inside your skull. Musashi understood this deeply. In his final years, he lived in a cave, not as an escape, but as a forge. A place where silence, repetition, and hardship refined his spirit. He became weathered, scarred, and unmoved. The world outside could shift, but the man within remained constant. This is the essence of endurance, a posture toward life that does not waver when storms form. Overthinking fades when you live like this, not because thoughts disappear, but because they no longer dictate your movement. You rise when it is time to rise. You work when it is time to work. You rest when it is time to rest. The mind stops being a tyrant and becomes a tool. Quiet strength is the anchor that keeps a man from drifting into mental chaos. When you endure, you become heavier in the right way, grounded, stable, unshakable. You learn that the most powerful warriors are not the loudest ones. They are the ones who remain standing after everything else has fallen away. There comes a point in a man's journey when he realizes that ending overthinking is not about defeating thoughts. It is about becoming someone who moves regardless of them. A man who walks through the void, not emptiness, but presence. This is the final transformation Musashi taught. The void is the space where fear loses its form, where hesitation dissolves, where the man acts from a deeper truth than comfort or certainty. Overthinking loses its grip when you stop trying to control the mind and begin shaping the man who carries it. A man who endures moves with a different rhythm. He does not pause to measure every shadow. He does not shrink from uncertainty. He does not freeze when doubt whispers. He continues walking, because walking is who he is now. Motion becomes identity. Stillness becomes decay. Musashi's final wisdom was simple. The path is walked, not imagined. You spend your life wandering through imagined corridors, mental mazes you build and then fear. But outside that maze is open terrain, quiet and vast. The moment you step into it, the mind begins to settle. The walls that once felt towering reveal themselves as illusions that crumble under motion. Becoming this kind of man is not dramatic. It is not loud. There is no applause. It happens on ordinary mornings, in silent rooms, during the small moments when you choose motion over paralysis. You do not defeat overthinking by force. You starve it by living. A man who moves through the void is not fearless. He is willing. He carries his uncertainty like a blade at his side, not to wave around, but to be ready. His past no longer chains him. His future no longer haunts him. He is grounded in the step he is taking now. And this is the quiet revelation. Overthinking ends not when the mind becomes silent, but when the man begins to move again. When endurance becomes your nature. When the storms inside your skull become echoes. When you decide, finally, to live as a warrior who walks forward, even through the void.